Last year, BYU made a habit of pulling rabbits out of hats. I don't think they have enough hats.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. If you're watching on YouTube, it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Do you want to know how the teams that make up the Holy War are faring this year? You will find out on today's show. You will also find out why Syracuse is going to take a step back, and that's just fine. That's on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, Jake, regrettable though the Jake Retzloff situation is, I am not here to debate and discuss all of that. I am here to debate and discuss what it means for the results on the field. I am left with a BYU team that has... You don't have Jake Retzloff back there. In fact, I know I'm stating the obvious, but let's just get down to the nuts and bolts of it. I struggle to trust a team that was going on a magical run last year, and BYU fans and I had a nice little arrangement that worked out. But the magic ran out. Now you lose your quarterback. I don't know if they can win that many one-score, wild, crazy games again. So BYU having a preseason win total, according to our friends at FanDuel, of 6.5, to me is appropriate. And I regret to inform you, I don't love it. I'm not crazy about the over. So I'll throw it to you first, because those are just two reasons why I'm like, I don't know about this year. But where do you come down for BYU's record?
Well, I can tell you FanDuel, when Jake Retzloff was looking like he was going to be the guy for BYU, was 7.5 wins for the Cougars. They've dropped him a whole win in terms of that over-under total after his departure. I believe that Jake Retzloff was a good quarterback, Spencer, but here's the thing of BYU. This is a program and a university that's been used to seeing great or elite quarterbacks come through this program over the decades, and Jake, just simply put, was not that. There were times BYU seemed to win games last year in spite of him being their quarterback, and that's why I believe that BYU, even with having to fill some holes at wide receiver, having to replace their defensive line, I think that Kalani Sitake, his whole mantra of having a complete game, offense, defense, and special teams complementing one another, that's why BYU got to 11-2 last year. It's not because of Jake Retzloff, and that's why I believe BYU absolutely can soar past that 6.5 figure.
By that much. This is what I call half a win.
Okay.
I've got him over. I was teasing you just a hair right there. I've landed on 7-5.
Okay.
I think this is a classic regression situation. Doesn't mean I think Kalani Sitake is a bad coach. Not every coach is going to hit a ceiling every year. I think Lane Kiffin's a great coach. If I were Florida, I'd hire him or maybe Jed Fish, depending on how the Huskies do in the Big Ten this season, and probably when they eventually fire and move on from Billy Napier. But I think Ole Miss is a major pullback team this year. I don't believe in their ability to get back to the playoff whatsoever after coming up short a year ago. College football can be cyclical. Not every program is right there at the top every single year in the playoff discussion consistently. I think it'll be a fun season for BYU. I'm sorry, but I'm going to pick you to lose to Utah. I love Utah. You're going to hear you're going to hear about that more later on today's show. But I'm bullish on Utah and BYU. I'm like, like I was originally 8-4 with BYU, but then I went, we're gonna bring that down by one.
Spencer, have you looked at BYU's schedule?
I have extensively. Believe it or not, I know some people foolishly believe this from time to time. I do prepare for this show. I do from time to time peruse the interwebs for information to look at what I want to talk about and use that information to inform my takes.
Here's BYU's opening 6 games. Portland State, Stanford, East Carolina, Colorado, Arizona, West Virginia. if BYU's not 5-1 by the time they get to that Utah game 7, Spencer, I will be absolutely floored. That will be like just a failure, in my opinion, if they don't get to that level. I think, quite honestly, that East Carolina game is the scariest of the bunch, in my opinion.
Whoa.
That's serious. You hot take.
First of all, just cruising by the Bachmeier revenge game is just incredible. I mean,
it's Stanford.
I have Stanford picked last in the ACC this year. I don't think they even. I think they're a program in transition at the moment, which is fine. They're starting to care. Andrew Luck's there. It's all good. I do have them going 5-1 in that stretch. I actually have their loss being Colorado, who I don't think is great. I think they and BYU are kind of similar. I like the Cougars more because they weren't reliant on two guys that aren't there. Sure. But Boulder is going to be rocking. I don't think they're bad. I think they're fine. Like they're middle. Like I have Colorado going 5-7 this year. It's fine. There's nothing. They're not bad. They're fine.
Jay Hill loves quarterbacks who are making starts early on in their career, and that's exactly what they could potentially have in Juju Lewis.
I don't think they're starting Juju Lewis in that game. I think that'll still be Caden Salter territory.
If it's Caden Salter, I still believe that Jay Hill will have something cooked up for him, and I think it's still early enough in the season that BYU can pick off Colorado. My point is, if they cruise to a 6-0 start here, Spencer, then you pick off 2 more wins and you're 8-4, which is where I think BYU settles, at least in my opinion, this season. And I think that's the thing about this is a team, speaking of BYU, that plays really, really good defense. It's going to be downright elite, it feels like. Even with a revamped defensive line, I believe that Jay Hill will have those guys balling. What I've seen in training camp so far leads me to absolutely believe that. LJ Martin looks like he could be a difference maker at running back to help whoever ends up as quarterback settle in nicely. I think BYU is going to surprise some folks.
Okay. I think that's a reasonable way of viewing BYU. You're a reasonable guy. Can we go back to something that you just kind of said, and I didn't want to let you just get away? What is scaring you about East Carolina so much?
Going across the country and a team that's pass happy like East Carolina early on in the season, and BYU lost the last time they went to East Carolina back in, it was like 2016. So there you go.
Oh boy. The nightmares have already begun. You know, Jake has woke up just sweating at 3 a.m. a couple more. His wife's like, "What? What's wrong?" I just had a nightmare. BYU was playing East Carolina the early part of the season, the easy part of the schedule. It was ruined.
They have to go 3-0 in that non-conference slate, Spencer. There's just zero doubt about it. They can't. But I'm telling you, traveling 2 time zones to the East Coast has routinely been a problem for BYU. And with a pass-happy offense like East Carolina has, and I think a decent Pirates squad, they could be dangerous for BYU. I'm not saying it's an upset by any means, but I'm not saying it's upset alert by any means, I should say. But I absolutely believe that is the most dangerous game in the first 6 games, including Colorado.
Yeah, somebody call Hans Zimmer. Let's start playing the Pirates of the Caribbean music just to trigger Jake, just to get him worried about that game. Just da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so let's talk about the back half to wrap things up here. It gets significantly tougher. The Utah game, I think Kyle Whittingham is still really good. I have said and continue to firmly believe that if he beats BYU last year, he's not currently Utah's head coach. I think Kyle Whittingham is going to be as ready to roll in that game as you could possibly be. I'm always here for the Holy War, man. Injected into my veins every year. It can't get here soon enough. It's the game on BYU schedule I am most excited to see every year, and this season in particular, because if Kyle Whittingham loses, he might come back again, and then Morgan Scalley might decide to leave to be a head coach somewhere because he's tired of waiting for this guy to retire, and Whittingham will just sit there going, I can't just end with a loss to BYU. That's not the way that this can go. So in that particular game, I think Utah gets payback in a great game. Like coin flip games, one way, one the other way. That's how I see it. How do you see that matchup?
I told JT we did a crossover edition. Actually, you'll hear that on my podcast feed today, in fact. And I said 3 is coming for BYU. I believe the Cougars will squeak it out at home. But the problem I see after that, Spencer, is the very next week you have to go on the road to Iowa State. Rocco Becht and the Cyclones in Ames. That feels like it's a scheduled loss for BYU, unfortunately. And that's the problem. If you lose to Utah, then you go across the country to Ames and lose to the Cyclones. Suddenly you're on a 2-game slide. You have a bye week. And then, by the way, this program named Texas Tech, you may have heard of how much money they're spending.
Yeah, I have. Hold on. I think I actually have a graphic that shows the confidence. Oh, boom!
There you go. Yeah.
Number 1 in someone's preseason power rankings in the Big 12.
So I'm just saying that's a very difficult stretch, and BYU very easily can find themselves 0-3. And then, by the way, TCU's the 4th game in that 4-game set. And quite honestly, those 4 games are going to determine how BYU fans really feel about this season.
Utah at Iowa State at Texas Tech, TCU. 2-2 in that stretch feels great.
Amen.
I have them losing 3 of them, but hey, that's just me. That's just me. And frankly, BYU fans, it should be music to your ears that I'm picking against BYU in any capacity, because I did that last year and you guys won 11-2. So it worked out pretty well. Jake Hatch always works out here on the show. We're going to the other side of the holy war. How else would I schedule these things? Do you think I schedule segments on shows by accident? Absolutely, positively not. I mean, Syracuse is, a little bit off the beaten path, but we couldn't do an all Big 12 show. I could, technically. But anyway, getting back to my tease here that my boss would tell me it's gone on too long. Yeah, go ahead.
That's called Locked On Big 12, just by the way.
Yeah, it is. I love Utah. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. If you wanted to find out what certain lines were with regards to college football, you can do that, because games that are less than a month away can be wagered upon right now. Farmageddon, Kansas State, Iowa State, you can bet that game. Michigan, Ohio State, there's a line for it. Ohio State's favored by 5.5 last time I checked. Anything you want college football related, conference title odds, national title odds, it's all over there at FanDuel. If you are new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's a great deal. You want great deals in life. Make sure you go check out FanDuel. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. I am such a sucker for Utah football. JT Wistrcill, Locked On Utes. Let's do this again, JT. Last year, perhaps more infamously than famously at this point, I picked Utah to win the Big 12, to play in that title game against Kansas. Neither one made a bowl game. So anyway, here we are, Groundhog's Day, and tiebreakers get wonky. So I'll hold off on. I previously said Kansas State, Texas Tech, but I'm throwing Utah into the fold. I'm going 10-2 for a second straight year. Death taxes in Utah football. It was quarterback centric, the issues for Utah last year. I think they fixed that. It's different. It's new. But they get a bunch of their biggest games at home. I don't think they lose till later in the year. I think they beat UCLA on the road week 1 in a very exciting game. I have no earthly idea why they're going to Laramie to play Wyoming in week 3. This is just danger with Texas Tech the following week. Ask them how dangerous it can be to go play in Wyoming. It's scary. So you've got the look-ahead factor at Wyoming, but Texas Tech at home, Arizona State at home, BYU on the road, but I don't know who their quarterback is, as I talked about earlier on the show. Kansas State at home. I think their losses are at Baylor, and I'll take them to stumble at Kansas as well. There are a lot of different ways this can shake out to 10-2. I like the schedule for the Utes, JT. Are you going to talk me off the ledge?
Not at all, because guess what? I fell for the same thing last year, and if it goes south, I'll be right next to you in that ship as it goes down. But I do believe this Utah team is going to bounce back. You just had Jake Hatch on and talked about BYU, but now you are having on the best team in the state of Utah and talking about them. That will be the Utah Utes this season, and you mentioned why, Spencer. It's Devin Dampier, the only quarterback in college football last year to rush for 1,000 yards, throw for 2,500 yards. The player, not quarterback, the player who led college football in yards per carry at over 7 yards per carry. That's right. It wasn't Jeremiah Love. He was second. It was Devin Dampier, number one, who was tied with John Mateer for the most forced missed tackles last year. Devin Dampier was. He's a dynamic dual threat quarterback. He was sacked just 5 times last year, despite playing some P4 teams. Now he's behind what might be the best offensive line, maybe even in college football. I think they're a top 10 unit, but either way, the best tackle duo in college football. I think this Utah team with some strong coaching on the defensive side of the ball. We know what Kyle Whittingham will bring. Also, Utah's new offensive coordinator, because last year's offense was so bad, pretty much everything had to go there, is Jason Beck, who last year with Devin Dampier, they were 4th in the country in yards per game. That quarterback, that offensive line, a nice running back too in Wayshawn Park, over 700 yards last year with Washington State. I really like this Utah team. Despite a few questions, I think this Utah team's bouncing back. I got them at 10-2 as well, Spencer.
Do you know the name of the head coach that is at New Mexico now, where Jason Beck just came from?
It's Jason Eck.
Jason Eck.
Idaho coach, who also just bodied a great Office parody for a ticket sales video. It's phenomenal.
Really?
Yes, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Oh, that's outstanding. Outstanding. Now, let me just play devil's advocate here for a moment. For those on YouTube, here are my Big 12 preseason power rankings. I've got Utah there at number 6.
You switched so fast from this when you released this not long ago.
Well, nothing's changed. Nothing.
Those are all 10-win teams on there?
No, those are not all. Iowa State is not a 10-win team.
Okay.
Baylor is not a 10-win team. Arizona State is not a 10-win team. I think there are 3 10-win teams here. Look, preseason power rankings are one thing. How your schedule shakes out and your resulting record's another. So the devil's advocate play for Utah this year is they have my preseason number 1 team in Texas Tech on their schedule. Preseason number 2 and reigning champs on their schedule, Arizona State. Preseason number 3, Kansas State on the schedule. Preseason number 5 on the schedule. So this is, and they have to play BYU on the road. I don't need to explain how difficult that game could wind up being, no matter the records. So how prepared do you feel this Utah football team is to not just avoid a week 1 stumble against Nico Iamaleava and UCLA, but to go toe-to-toe with teams that I think are 3 of the 5 to 6 best in this conference?
I think they're very well equipped. I'll also just add this. You mentioned those top 3 teams in your rankings. All of them have to come to Salt Lake City. The toughest road game Utah has is they do have to go to Waco, take on Baylor, but so many of those home games I mentioned against some of the best teams. And if you take out last season, this Utah team has been phenomenal inside of Rice-Eccles Stadium. When they have their starting quarterback available, especially, they haven't lost him forever. Because even when Oregon beat them a few years back, that was with Rice and Barnes. So this home field advantage for Utah is absolutely real. This is a team, too. They're built with that strength in the trenches. So I believe right away that's something that's going to allow them to have that success, too. And this is just a team with a culture and identity that so many of those games, how many one-score games last year too, Spencer? That was another thing where it's just like, oh, if you just had the quarterback, now they do. And this Utah team, I just think they have so much potential. No back-to-back road games either. I'll add that as well too. They're all broken up by byes and things of that nature. So I really think it sets this team up nicely. The final 3 games is a very difficult stretch where you go Baylor, Kansas State, Baylor, and then Kansas. That's a very daunting stretch. But this Utah team has the talent we talked about offensively. I think it's going to be one of the best linebacking cores in the Big 12. Absolutely. One of the best safety duos in the country, a really strong cornerback room, some questions along the defensive line, but I think they'll be fine against the run. Just need to rush the passer better. But Morgan Scalley is one of the best DCs in the country. It's the reason he's the head coach in waiting too. So I just trust this Utah team. The few questions they have, wide receiver, defensive line, I trust them to figure those out enough. And the positives this team has, I think they're going to overcome those negatives. And I do think they end up in Arlington, and I think they got a great shot. Heck, I picked them to win the conference. I'm not afraid to say that right here. I think they are going to beat Texas Tech not once, but twice in that Big 12 title game. And Kyle Whittingham gets to go out on top like he likes to.
Whoa. Those are my Red Raiders you're talking about. You will speak of them with respect. So
you have them losing to Utah, right?
One time.
Yeah.
In Salt Lake City. I didn't say anything about beating Texas Tech twice. I'm sorry, Texas Tech fans. I'm sorry you had to hear that. I didn't want your ears to be graced not great to be assaulted with such vitriol from JT Wistrcill. Anyway, you mentioned the one possession losses last year. 8 points at Arizona State, 6 points against TCU, 3 points at Houston, 1 point against BYU, 3 points against Iowa State. It wasn't good. If Utah has to turn half of those around and they're suddenly well over 500. And then you figure, well, wait a minute. If they do have better quarterback play, are they really going to lose to a Colorado team that I think is a pullback from a year ago? No, I don't really think so. Are they really going to lose to Arizona or a team of that caliber? No. So the schedule goes at UCLA, Cal Poly, at Wyoming, Texas Tech, at West Virginia, Arizona State, at BYU, Colorado, Cincinnati, at Baylor. That could be a loss. Kansas State, that could be a loss, but you're at home. I'm not going to do that. At Kansas. You keep Devin Dampier healthy. 10-2. 10-2. What do you think is the floor for this Utah team?
If everyone's healthy, I'd say 8-4. Like if there's injuries, obviously anything can happen.
But the floor is over their win total of 7.5, according to our friends at FanDuel.
I'm confident, man.
He said that.
I like this team. Two projected offensive tackle. Both are projected offensive tackles. First round picks.
This is true.
Games are won and lost in the trenches. Ask your buddies in the SEC.
My buddies.
You're locked on college football. You're friends with everyone, Spencer. Everyone loves you.
Okay. I thought there was an implication of a bias. Thought there was an implication of.
I mean, outside the fact you
bias.
had Jake on and BYU before me, you're not biased outside of that.
This is very true. I'm definitely not leading my show with an SEC program tomorrow, but we'll save that for another day. JT Wistrcill, Locked On Utes, great as always. We're flipping to the ACC away from the Holy War and a team up in New York that I think is regressing, but it's really not that bad. I am in a position that I don't want to be in, but I don't know what other position I'm able to be in. Syracuse missing a bowl game is on the table after a 10-win season. Jackson Holzer of Locked On Orange is here. I like Steve Angeli. I legitimately do. He's not the most proven guy in the world. I think the potential is really there. I think Fran Brown's really good. This is an offense that lost quite a bit from a season ago. But holy smokes, Jackson, when everyone discusses the 10 hardest schedules in college football, you better have Syracuse on there because this is probably the toughest in the ACC. I don't know how Louisville's not on there at least, but just about everybody else who's going to be good in the ACC is. No SMU, I suppose, as well. But
no, they do have SMU.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry, yeah, SMU is on there because of course. But I mean, you've got Tennessee and Notre Dame in the non-conference. You go at Clemson, you go at SMU. Is 5-7 a crazy prediction to you? Because I wanted to land somewhere else. I really did, in theory. But in practicality, that's where I wound up. They could be the best 5-7 team in the country.
Well, Syracuse fans aren't going to be happy you said that. I'll tell you that right now.
No.
Because I don't think they want to envision a world where Syracuse doesn't make a bowl. But the reality is that this is a team that has, I think, a pretty high ceiling, but also a pretty low floor. They're kind of difficult to project this upcoming season. Aside from the schedule, we don't even know who the quarterback is going to be. And, okay, let's say we do find out pretty soon if it's Steve Angeli or Ricky Collins. We don't know how they're going to be as full-time starting quarterbacks in college football because they've never done it before. Angeli does have a little bit more experience, as the coaching staff has pointed out, the fact that he has started a bowl game, the fact that he made a brief appearance in last year's college football playoff, all is good. Ricky Collins, they say, has a ton of talent, but only 7 career passing attempts in his college career. Uncertainty at quarterback, new team just across the board. They lost a lot of returning production from a year ago. So already it's a question a little bit with this team. Then you factor in the schedule.
Yeah.
And the reason why 5-7 is on the table is because you look at some of their difficult games, right? At Clemson, at Notre Dame. Those are going to be really tough to win. Tennessee, neutral site to kick off the season. I mean, that's going to be really tough to win, even if you think that Syracuse can pull off that upset, which I think I would give them a puncher's chance at doing. That's what the odds makers are saying over on FanDuel. They give Syracuse a puncher's chance. But then you look at Miami, at SMU, at Georgia Tech. They're playing 5 of the projected top 6 teams in the ACC. So if Syracuse goes the whole year without pulling off an upset and they don't run the table against the teams that they're either at least on par with or they're close enough in talent, or maybe they have more talent then yeah, they could go 5-7 or maybe even 4-8. Having said that, Spencer, if they pull off a couple of upsets, this is a team that I could see also going 8-4 or 9-3. It's tough to project Syracuse in 2025, much tougher than it was last year.
Yeah, I agree. If they had Kyle McCord, I think this would be 7-5 minimum and 9-3 max. But for those on YouTube, you can see my preseason ACC power rankings. Number 1, Clemson. Syracuse plays them on the road. Number 2, Miami. Syracuse plays them on the road. Thank goodness they missed Louisville because they play number 4, Georgia Tech, on the road. They play number 5, SMU on the road. They play number 6, Duke, at home. 5 of the top 6 and 4 of those 5 on the road. Then you factor in a week 1 game against Tennessee, who I talked about yesterday on the show. I don't think Tennessee's a playoff team. I do think their roster is still in a good spot. It's just kind of the same as Syracuse. I have quarterback questions. However, which roster do I trust more with quarterback questions right now? The answer is Tennessee. They're a big favorite, 14.5 points. And look, I've seen 14.5 point favorites lose in the early portion of the season before. Ohio State was favored by 22.5 last year against Michigan at home. 2021 against Oregon, it was 14.5. I mean, it's happened. The bottom line that Cal is the most recent ACC example I can think of. They were 12.5 point dogs going to Auburn last year, walked away outright winners. If Syracuse wins that game, Jackson, I think 10 wins is on the table. I mean, if you can win that game in week 1 before you fully acclimated a quarterback to the offense and figured out who is playing where and how good everyone's going to be, yeah, I think you could do a lot of things. But this stretch of at Clemson, Duke, at SMU, Pitt, who's not a slouch, by the way. Eli Holstein is back there for the Panthers. At Georgia Tech, 2 and 3 would be great. It would be great. I've got him 1-4 in those games. 3 and 2 would be, holy smokes, is Syracuse going to be the best 9-3 team in the country?
You know, Spencer, if Syracuse is a good team, which hopefully they are, roster-wise, talent-wise, that's a question. Again, we don't necessarily know because they don't have the same returning production like they had last year. But if Syracuse is a good team, which I hope they are, you're allowed to beat other good teams. So as intimidating of a schedule as it is, you are allowed to go on the road and beat SMU. You can do that. If you are a good team, is it unreasonable to suggest you can't pull off an upset or 2 and that you can't hold serve at home? See, here's the thing with Syracuse. Yeah, it's on the table that they miss a bowl, 100%. Last year wasn't really on the table where they could miss a bowl. You just looked at their schedule, you looked at their talent, and you're like 6-6, maybe at worst. But they were going to make a bowl, probably no problem last year. This year, you know what? Yeah, it's going to be tougher to make a bowl. But you know what? I'm not giving them excuses. I'm not sitting here saying, yeah, I'm okay with 5-7. I'm okay with being the best 5-7 team in the country. No. The expectation this season at minimum is to make a bowl. That's my opinion. Now, Fran Brown and the roster, they'd probably tell you that the expectation is to go undefeated and win the national championship. Now, I'm not going to go that far, but at minimum, you got to make a bowl this season. I don't care how tough the schedule is. If you're a good team, you can beat other good teams. It's as simple as that.
That's a good way of looking at it. That's a very rosy, optimistic outlook. And you know what? I by the way, I don't take pleasure in coming down on this record prediction for Syracuse. I'd love to see them go 9-3. Because you know what? With this schedule, if they go 9-3, that means they probably beat either Tennessee or Notre Dame or Clemson. They'd have a win over one of the. They'd have to win. I think one of those. Technically speaking, those could be their only losses of the year. I don't think that's particularly likely if they're good enough to go 9-3 with the schedule that they're only losing, those But can we talk about Syracuse as a playoff at large, please? Please, if they go 9-3, Tennessee and Notre Dame when they go at Clemson, at Georgia Tech, man, it's just at Miami. That would be like think of it. Maybe let's say just hypothetically they do lose only to Notre Dame, Clemson, and Tennessee. Syracuse can make the ACC championship game.
You're right.
They probably would.
You're right. They would. They would be 7-1 in the conference.
Yeah.
There you go. They're in the ACC title, and all you got to do is win one game to make the college football playoff. I will say this: unlike last year, this year because the schedule is tougher, it works in both ways. Yeah, it's going to be tougher to make a bowl. It's also easier to make the college football playoff if you're good, right? If you go 9-3. Maybe one of those wins is against Clemson. Maybe one of those wins is against a team like, I don't think they're going to beat Notre Dame. But the point being, maybe it's against Tennessee, who Tennessee ends up being a good team this year in the SEC. I don't know. It's probably going to factor in a win over Miami or a win over SMU. So if you're a good team, Syracuse, and you go 9-3, unlike last year where 9-3 wasn't close to consideration for the college football playoff, specifically for Syracuse, I think this year it would, where we would be sitting there on Selection Sunday with the 9-3 Syracuse team saying they have a shot. I don't know if they would get in at 9-3 because it's also the ACC and they're not going to get respect. We know this by now, but
probably not.
9-3, you would give yourself a shot where the committee might look at you and say, that might be a playoff team. The easiest thing to do, though, would just be, go to the ACC championship and win it. And you don't have to worry.
that would be easier, as it turns out, because there's an automatic berth in there because you'd be one of the 5 highest ranked conference champs. If you go 10-2, frankly, I think
10-2 they're in.
By the way,
could you?
Yeah, it should be. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if somehow a 9-3 Syracuse team got into the playoff? The SEC crowd would probably have a collective aneurysm and might just quit the sport just on principle. They wouldn't have looked at Syracuse's schedule as deeply as they maybe should have. But man, I tell you what, it's tough.
Well, Spencer, it's funny because they're playing Tennessee in week 1.
Yep.
And if they beat Tennessee, then what are they going to say? You know what they're going to say, Spencer, if they beat Tennessee in week 1?
It's week 1. Doesn't count.
No. Forget that. It's going to be even worse. Well, Tennessee's not good. Tennessee's not a part of us. Tennessee's not an SEC.
It doesn't count
this year. What are you talking about? Like, you didn't play Georgia. You didn't play Alabama like the rest of us and lose by 40 to them, You got to play Tennessee, who was average, and they're not very good. And then we're going to sit here and say, like, really, we're doing this again. So if you beat an SEC team, that SEC team isn't very good. But if you lose to the SEC, the conference is just so superior. You know how it works.
That is indeed the way. Hey, Tennessee, preseason top 20 team, which is a little bit too much respect. Jackson Holzer, Locked On Syracuse. Great as always, my man. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.